Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another Mailbag, off-season 2025, the annual and traditional No Tennis Questions Mailbag. Coming at you from a brand new studio in Salt Lake City after a long hiatus on the channel. Some of you will have seen the YouTube short that I posted onto this channel last week. Some of you follow me on social media and know some of the things I'm about to say, but I can't assume everybody watching and listening has. So if you are not up to speed, a lot has gone down in the last month or so. I got engaged to my longtime girlfriend, Jenna. We took a trip to Thailand, and she got a new job, which means I also have moved from Tucson to Salt Lake City. I still have my base in LA. So all of these things over the course of the last month, not to mention Thanksgiving, just actually got back from Dallas today, this morning, to tour wedding venues. So we're trying to get some stuff together. Good timing with tennis off season. I wish I was able to offer more once the Alcaraz Juan Carlos Ferrero news dropped, but I will certainly cover that next week, and we are firing up the content machine again. It is great to be back. It is hard to believe that it's been almost a month since I've spoken into this microphone. And as always, very much looking forward to the No Tennis Questions Mailbag, where we do what it sounds like we do. We talk about everything else. It's kind of fun. First question is from Kate. Spotify Wrapped reveal, always an important item of business on the No Tennis Questions Mailbag. So it is, as always, a great place to begin. Some of you may know I am an albums listener, so I'm not going to do my top songs. That doesn't matter. My top songs is just whatever albums I spun the most, usually the first track or the second track. It's meaningless. So I'm going to do top artists here. And coming in at number 5 was Jeff Rosenstock, the energetic punk rock artist who was my number 1 artist last year. There was still plenty of Jeff Rosenstock residue, especially in the first half of 2025, as I continued to kind of discover the rest of his discography, which I just find to be so consistent. If you like rock music, if you don't mind something that's a little bit like grungier on the ears or harder on the ears, I think you'll really love Jeff Rosenstock. His songwriting, I think, is just so on point, and the performances across the band, I think, are awesome. At number 4 is Clips. It's my favorite album of the year. I know that, Clips comes in as my number 4 artist, but if all of the music were deleted and I could only listen to one album from 2025, it would definitely be the Clips record, Let God Sort 'Em Out, with its remarkable wordplay, rhyme schemes, hard-hitting beats from Pharrell. It was their first album in 14 years, and it felt like they spent 14 years poring over how to make the hardest rap record imaginable, because that's what Clips and which is a rap duo of Pusha T and Malice. That's what they did, and it is just endlessly listenable. And I think this will be the kind of album that I will continue to go back to, like maybe kind of forever. Which to me, it's the only album that I can really say that about. A lot of these others will kind of fade, even if I was bumping them on heavy rotation this year. Tyler, the Creator, at number 3. Actually had 2 releases this year. I did not listen that much to the more dance-oriented, kind of fun record that he put out, Don't Tap the Glass, but I was very into Chromacopia. So Chromacopia was an Tyler, the Creator album that I loved. Hard to describe his style. I feel like if you know him, and you love him. I don't know. He's just he's got a very distinctive sound, not just as a rapper, but even more so as a producer, I would say. At number 2 is Clairo. Definitely the softest, sweetest sounding music that I have on my list. Clairo, I suppose you would call her, it's not, is it bedroom pop? Is it indie pop? What, let me just look up like Clairo. Yeah. Indie pop, soft rock, electro pop, folk. Okay. This was her album this year, Charm, first Clairo album that I've ever gotten into. It was just so easy for me to turn it on. It was just so easy on the ears. It didn't really matter what I was doing or where I was or what kind of mood I was in. That was an album that I could kind of turn on and sort of just sit with at any time. And I think that's a big reason why Clairo ends up coming in at number 2. At number 1 is a shocker. I mean, The Weeknd is number 1. Now, he's a very popular artist. He's Casper Ruud's favorite. But if you would have told me that The Weeknd would have been my number 1 artist, I would not have believed you if you told me that before the year, because he is never an artist who I took much of an interest in, despite his massive commercial success. I've never been a Weeknd guy. I haven't disliked him. I just never gravitated towards him. And this year, I listened to his release, his latest album, and I couldn't get enough of it. It's called Hurry Up Tomorrow. Now, the irony here is I feel as if many fans of The Weeknd, or the mainstream appeal of this album, was way lower than most Weeknd albums. So here I am jumping on the bandwagon, and it feels like a lot of people at the very same time jumped off. This is an album that, to me, I enjoyed for its ambience, psychedelic, atmospheric, dramatic. The transitions between all the songs are on point. It really kind of feels like a cohesive experience, even though it's very, very long, which I think factors into why The Weeknd ends up being my number 1 artist. I mean, I kind of knew he would be because I played that record a lot, but it's like an hour and a half. So every time I hit play on this album, and you know, a big factor here is I'll do work with music on. And this was an album that I thought only sounded good at night. And I love doing work to it. So I can't tell you how many times I had a broadcast on Tennis Channel in the morning, often, you know, early mornings at Tennis Channel, because the tennis is in Europe most of the year, which means I'm prepping at night and I'm throwing on this Weeknd album from this year and basically prepping for my broadcast tomorrow with that on in the background, which just kind of, it had enough intensity and speed, but also enough atmosphere to kind of allow me to sort of sink into my work almost. So I ended up playing that a lot. It was a mainstay, but very funny how that worked. Am I going to go back and like see if now that I loved Hurry Up Tomorrow, if I mess with some of The Weeknd's older stuff, I am going to sort of make more of an effort to maybe get into some of his older albums. I will. I also watched his TV show, The Idol, on HBO. It was horrible. It was horrible in a way that was kind of entertaining. So he should maybe stick to music. But, I mean, credit to anybody who tries to dip their toe in something else. All right, let's move on. This is from Matt. Last year in this mailbag, you provided an update on how your personal playing has gone in the last year. Perhaps time for a new update? Is there anything specific you've been focusing on in your game? Do you feel like any part of your game has improved or declined? Any cool courts you got to hit on while on a trip commentating? I'll start with the last one, cool courts I got to hit on. I called, 3 challengers this year: Phoenix, Aix-en-Provence, and Sumter in South Carolina. I hit on all 3 of those trips, did the center court on Phoenix, did the center court in Sumter, which I remember not so much for the court itself, but for the incredible heat and humidity that just had me suffering out there, despite honestly not working that hard in theory. And then Provence was a beautiful court. I did not hit on their center court, unfortunately. Hopefully, maybe next time. I think I'll be back next year. But I did hit on a practice court, red clay. Posted a little YouTube short of my hitting. Very short one, just a few forehands. But that was an awesome and very fun experience. And I never play on red clay here in the U.S. Very hard to find. All right, my game. Look, honestly, it's been difficult and frustrating just with my lifestyle. I crave more consistency. Like when I was in college, for example, and on the club tennis team at Syracuse, I had such great structure. Like I knew I was playing at least 2 nights a week for, I don't know how long we practiced, 2.5 hours. Like I knew I was getting 2 really solid nights of tennis in every week, no matter what. And I just don't have that so far in my adult life because there's so much inconsistency week to week, when I'm available, when I'm not, if I'm in LA, if I'm in Tucson or now Salt Lake City. So honestly, like that's how I'm feeling right now about my tennis game, is that it's very hard to be consistent. And on that note, like it's just going to be a continued effort to try to find, more of that routine. But it was kind of a tough year for that, I think. Do you feel like any part of your game has improved or declined? There's been some tinkering with my backhand this year, and I lowered the take back, and that's been good. I just think I was getting a little bit stiff in the wrists when I was doing sort of I kind of had a sort of a very big loop, a little bit Zverev-like with sort of a higher take back with maybe the left hand at the level of my shoulder. And I just found myself getting a little bit stiff in the wrists. And I kind of lowered my take back and sort of allowed myself to do a little bit less momentum wise with my arms. And it just kind of allowed me to sort of make the left wrist a little bit more supple and feel the ball a little bit better. And it's improved my backhand. What do I need to work on? Look, when I play a lot, I'll end up, maybe playing dingles, but if I'm not playing dingles and I'm doing hitting sessions with people, I did not play a lot of matches this year because I always felt like I was like just trying to get back into the swing of things. I just don't hit volleys. I don't hit overheads. I don't get practice in the forecourt with like the awkward little shots off of floaters or the short balls. Really, like anything inside the court, inside the service box, it's just in rough shape, including my overheads. They've gotten bad because I don't practice them enough. So that's what I need to get better. What never really goes away for me, like I always serve decent and the forehand is my strength. And it just never really, it's always fine. It never frustrates me. It's like my best friend. Next one is from member Poison Opinionator. Very intense username. Hi, Gill. Congrats on the engagement. Having gone through the process myself recently, can you share a little about how it all went down? Was there a racket or a tennis ball involved? No. There was, where I did it, there was a tennis court in the way distance. And part of me was like, I thought about asking Jenna and the photographer, like, should we go over to the courts and snap some shots? And I'm like, it's not necessary. It's just not. So there was no tennis involved, but I'll tell you the story. And it's interesting. I feel like with proposals, which have become, according to the boomers who I've consulted, including my parents, it's become a much bigger deal with social media, apparently, and it requires much more coordination and effort nowadays. And I feel like there's this balance between wanting it to be a surprise, but also making it nice and special. And sometimes those things sort of counteract each other. Like the more nice and special you try to make it, the more obvious it is you're about to propose. And I really like the idea of being able to celebrate with family afterwards. So what I ended up doing was I used Thanksgiving as my cover. Knowing that my parents, Jenna's parents, and grandma, they were going to come in, which I really liked. So, and Jenna was going to get off work that week. So we planned a little bit of a staycation in beautiful Tucson. We did not know at the time, but it ended up being sort of a last hurrah in Tucson in the, absolute stunning natural beauty that place has to offer. We kind of went out to one of the resorts, way, way out of town, feels very remote. And before dinner, I suggested we watch the sunset. There was some more choreography involved that I don't think it's necessary to get into. But we basically watched the sunset before dinner after having just a fantastic day with hiking, massage at a beautiful spa, a cocktail making class, which was fun. Then we went out, before getting ready for dinner, went out to watch the sunset. I proposed then. Then obviously we took pictures, and then we got to have a phenomenal dinner, and they treated us incredibly well at the resort. So yeah, it worked out perfectly. Parents came in the next day, had breakfast, celebrated Thanksgiving. Yeah, it was awesome. Was she on to me? She was on to me. I had told her at the start of the year, and she was, we'd been together 7 years. She was not putting me under too much pressure, which she was very much like patient about it, but was definitely ready for it to happen. And last off season, we went to Hawaii, and I thought maybe she might have been expecting it then. And I didn't want her to feel like disappointed if it didn't happen. So I just kind of told her at that point, I said, hey, I don't really have my ducks in the row, not ready. So it's not going to happen on this vacation, but I promise at some point in the next year. So I gave her that assurance. And then we were kind of coming up on the end of the year. And I think she could just kind of tell that it was coming. But hey, I think I did pretty well with some of the things to kind of throw her off at the last minute. And the most important thing, she liked the ring. That was what I was most nervous about, to be honest with you. From Akaril, I feel that you successfully combine the role of being a traditional journalist as well as also being a content creator in the age of social media. Can you talk about what you think is great about each one's and what aspects of them you struggle with the most? I don't know if traditional journalist would be a characterization that I would fully agree with, but definitely a traditional member of the media in the sense that I'm a commentator and I work for big, well-established outlets in the live tennis broadcast space. So I see what you mean. I think that's what you meant by traditional, but I don't necessarily engage in all that much journalism by at least my definition of the word. To me, journalism means you are constantly seeking new information, seeking to uncover new information and interpret new information. And that's not really what I do here on the channel. It's something different than that, generally at least. But it's still, nonetheless, a very good question. What is great about each one? So, look, what's great about tennis commentary and my role for ATP and Tennis Channel and the US Open is that I get to be lost in what is the core product of this thing that we love, which are these tennis matches and these tennis tournaments, and try to enhance that experience for audiences and really feel as if you really feel as if you have a responsibility, and you also have a rush because you don't know what's going to happen next, what you're going to say, how you're going to react. And it feels almost like you're playing the match in your own kind of way. So many people who get into this, probably not so much from the former player side, the ex-pros, but a lot of the more like traditional background broadcasters, they all kind of have the same story. And I don't think mine is unique, where it's like you have this absolutely burning passion and love for sports, and you want to experience it and be a part of it any way you can. And I think in some ways, calling games is the closest simulation you can have to actually being in the thick of it. And the way a lot of people are then experiencing that, the viewership of that is through you in a way. At the same time, you are not the show, right? They are not here for you. They are here for the match. And your job is merely to enhance the match, merely to make the experience better. So it's an incredibly rewarding thing. And it's a craft that, just like a tennis player, you have to work on different techniques. You're trying to get better. You are reviewing how you sound and what you did and evaluating whether or not you should be making changes in various areas. So it is also, I think, anything worthwhile in life. This is true for almost anything, to be honest with you. It's worthwhile because it's about the journey of getting better more than anything. So, I love that. And then what's great about the other stuff I do, the stuff I do with content, the stuff I do with not only the podcast and the show, but also some of the social media stuff that I spend my time engaging in. I think that's in a lot of ways, a more creative medium. You are creating out of nothing. In this case, you are the show. You are generating entertainment. So for people to take time, whether they're commuting or working out or washing the dishes, or they're sitting on the couch and watching on the TV, like, you are entering their lives. You are a part of their lives in a way that I think is a lot more intimate, a lot more meaningful. So I think the relationship with the audience is stronger. I think it is a little bit, it's a totally different challenge in what it requires. And then there's sort of the more mechanical and business-like side of it, which is you are your own boss. You own it. It is yours. Ownership is really, really valuable. It's something that I hold near and dear about this venture is the ownership aspect of it. It also kind of burdens you with some extra responsibilities, running it as a business, figuring out where you need help, what to invest in, how much you're able to do, decisions around all of that, and some of the more administrative stuff, which is stuff that I've always tried to avoid throughout my life. Some of that, but not too much. I think the struggle is, you say, what aspects of them do you struggle with the most? It's all a matter, and I've said this before, it's all a matter of time, resource, and how the two can take away from each other. I tend to, if there's going to be some sacrificing, I tend to always prioritize the live broadcasts because I feel an even greater responsibility to the audience who is not choosing to listen to me. They have to watch me in order to watch the sport that they love. And I feel that is the ultimate responsibility. It's not about that being, financially more important to me, even though at this stage it is. It's not really about that. It's about the responsibility I feel to do as good a job as possible in that role. But still, I think they're always they can sort of battle each other. And I think more often it's the broadcast side of things taking away from some of the ambition and some of the opportunities and imaginative things that I can sometimes, dream about doing with content. However, they also both feed into each other. In terms of name recognition and credibility and just engaging with the sport in these ways that make me a better commentator and a better podcast host from commentary. They also make each other better. I am better at both because I do both. So that's how I would kind of break it down. From your friendly GA pilot, Gill, time for the lightning round. All right. There's 8 of these. I'm not going to give any explanation. I'm just going to answer the questions. Taxi ride, talk or silent? Usually silent. Cilantro, yes or no? Man, I'm going to say no. I don't often force chefs or when I order guac at a Mexican restaurant, I do not say no cilantro because I'm okay with it. It is not my favorite flavor in the world. And when I'm making my own guac and my own mole gente, I'm not adding cilantro more often than not. Toilet paper, loose end, over or under? Over. Subtitles, on or off? Depends on the show. Sorry. Brush and floss or floss and brush? What's the difference? What goes first? Floss goes second, not first. Pizza, pineapple or no? No. I mean, again, Am I like getting really passionate about that? Like a lot of people from where I'm from, New York? No, I think people can chill a little bit about it. All right. It's not that big a deal, but I am rarely, if ever, ordering pineapple on a pizza. And if a pizza needs a pineapple, there's probably some underlying issues. Shower, morning or evening? Usually morning, almost always morning. Mac or PC? PC. I do not own a Mac. Yeah. All right. Moving on. From All About Tennis. Hey, Gill, I know that you are a sports fan other than tennis. So during the tennis offseason, what sports do you watch the most? What are your favorite teams/players? I'm a big New York Rangers fan. That is my top priority. I just love the product of hockey. To me, it has everything. It has the right amount of goals where it's still very exciting when there is a goal, but it's not so few that you get a lot of 0-0 or 1-0. It's not so many like a lacrosse where the goals don't feel special anymore. I feel like it's perfect. It's fast. It's physical. There's not a lot of stoppages. It's back and forth. I'm impressed by everything they do. They play hard. They play really, really hard. Like, that is so meaningful in my opinion. Whereas I don't always see that when I watch the NBA. I feel like they're, kind of going at 70% a lot of the times. I'm an NFL fan. It's not been a good year for my NFL viewership. Maybe it's because my fantasy teams are bad. Maybe it's because I have not done any gambling this year whatsoever on football, which there have been other years where I've been, throwing more wagers down on NFL games. So I don't know if it's also been all the craziness in my life, but I haven't been as on it as I usually am. But I'm a Jets fan, but they're so miserable, such a pathetic organization that usually I'm just watching football in general, American football, that is. And I'm a Knicks fan. I'll watch the Knicks in the playoffs. I don't have a way to watch the Knicks in every regular season game. Like, legitimately, I don't have a way where I'm at. But once they're in the playoffs and the games are on national TV, I'll get pretty into it. And, they've got a real shot to come out of the East this year. It's funny because the consensus is that they don't really have a real shot to win it, but they've got a real shot to make the final. That's how lopsided the conferences are in the NBA. And then by the time it's playoff time, they're actually trying. So I'm happy to watch playoff basketball. My Rangers caused me a lot of pain recently, though. All right. From Joe said, hey, Gil, could you give us a recap of some of your best meals in Thailand? All right. Here's the deal with food in Thailand. Eating in Bangkok is incredibly fun and, as a whole, very, very delicious. The entire sort of ethos of the food scene there, the fact that street food is so prominent, market food is so prominent, food court, food hall culture is so prominent. And what I mean by that is if you go to any of the major malls in Bangkok for, a shopping trip, you are going to be met with mightily impressive and sprawling food courts that are in a different stratosphere, not even in a similar category. I mean, nothing like the food courts that you might think of in an American mall. You have local operators, high-level operators, incredible variety, fresh food. It's not the ultra-processed chain food that you get in a food court in the U.S. It's totally a different thing. But I'm painting a picture where you end up eating. You don't have to eat like this, but you end up eating at a lot of stalls, right? You're at a market. You say, oh, that looks good. You're on the street. You say, that looks good. You're at a mall. You go down to the food court. That's your meal. There's so much just like good, abundant, fun, delicious Thai food that you might not like remember it forever. It might not stick with you the next day. You might not wake up thinking about it, but the overall experience of eating there is so, so fun. Now, if you seek out the best and most interesting, inventive restaurants in Bangkok, of course you can do it that way as well. That's just not really how, and that's how I would normally go on vacation. When I go to a major city, I'm like, give me the best. Give me what I'm going to remember. Give me something that that's going to be creative enough to make me think, and, the kind of meal that feels like an event. I did less of that on this trip. Now, part of it is because I was with a big group. There was a couple of meals that were catered with the group, including, of course, the wedding that I was there for. And that we did end up having a lot of meals at markets or at malls, so in that respect, it's hard for me to pinpoint like individual meals as much as I normally would be able to pinpoint individual meals after a vacation, because I love food travel. But I hope that kind of painted the picture. If there's one like restaurant recommendation that I would have, it would be Charmgang or Charmgang. This was a curry house that really did put a twist on every curry they did and executed it at such a high level, and really came through with some, very, very strong and I would say like charismatic flavors that it's the one place that I would make sure to go back to if I went back to Bangkok. Again, it's called Charmgang. I just had this very aromatic duck confit curry that I think was their take on like a massaman curry, because it was warm spices like cinnamons and nutmegs. Like it kind of gave you a hug, but it was also, a lot of massaman curry is just so mild, right? It's like the choice for people who don't like spicy food. This really did pack a punch in terms of its, pepperiness, and, it really did kind of give you enough to work with, where it wasn't just like a slightly sweet, mild massaman curry that sometimes you get. They didn't even call it that, by the way, massaman. That's what it reminded me of. The other thing I'll say, man, Thai omelets are awesome. It's like the opposite of a French omelet, where they get a wok really, 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 really hot, and they fry the egg in oil, and it gets almost this, browned, crispy-ish exterior. And, the other thing I'll mention is crab in general. Sea crab to me is such a beautiful flavor. It is oceanic, it is sweet, it is tender. And it is like such a luxury in the US to eat crab, to the point where like I might eat it every other year, like once or twice, not including sushi. If you include sushi, it's definitely more. But if I'm at like a restaurant and I'm ordering a dish with crab, with sea crab, specifically, yeah, that's a rare thing. I'm not talking about like, crab fried rice either, where a lot of people just get, cheap stuff. And it's not that there's not great crab fried rice in the US. Of course there is. But all I'm saying is the way that they will make you an omelet with big chunks of sea crab, or a curry with big chunks of sea crab, it's a huge luxury in the US. When I was in Bangkok, price-wise, I could spend all day eating crab because of the pricing dynamics in Bangkok. So that was also a part of my food experience, where I was eating tons of crab and just enjoying it so much. It's something that to me was unique to that trip, because it's a food I rarely eat because it's so price prohibitive in the US. From Mark, what in your opinion are the best sports for young children to learn for overall athletic development, and how valuable do you think cross-training is, especially in developmental years? I think incredibly valuable. I think soccer is great for footwork, but I think some of the American sports where you work on a throwing motion, or even baseball where you're rotating your hips to swing a bat, the one thing that soccer is missing is that rotational dexterity. Doesn't really have that as much, where the American sports tend to have that a little bit more in terms of baseball and football, or at least just, throwing a ball. All right. If I just say throwing a ball, swinging a bat, I think really taught me how to use my hips and rotate, which is like kind of the most basic thing in tennis technique is the rotational sort of biomechanics that you have to learn to implement. I think boxing is great. I'm not saying you should want your kid to get hit in the head, but I think just learning how to box, maybe never sparring. Certainly, I'm not saying that kids should necessarily be, fighting, but I think the footwork, right? You're jumping around, and again, you're using both arms. You're becoming more dexterous with both arms. There is a rotational aspect of it with the hips and the shoulders, and there's a fast twitch aspect to it. So I think that's probably the most underrated one is boxing. And I know everybody listening to this and watching this is probably like, what about skiing? What about skiing? Folks, I've never skied in my life. I really don't know anything about it. I'm now that I'm in Salt Lake City, I'm going to try skiing, and I'll be on the bunny hills with the rest of the 4-year-olds. So that's that. But I can't speak to skiing. I've never skied. I don't know anything. All right, let's move on. From Cameron, out of all the tennis commentators out there, including former legends enshrined in the Tennis Hall of Fame, you may be the best equipped to answer this question. With your expertise, can you rank order the big four plus Sinkaraz by who is the best overall eyebrows? Combination of color, texture, length, expressiveness, thickness, character, consistency, etc. Feel free to throw in other players that you find worthy of note. Thank you for taking on this pertinent and underappreciated topic. Well, thank you for asking. I must agree with you that I am the foremost authority on this. Obviously, thickness is probably most important, right? That's obvious. Thickness is most important. And for that, I would have to probably say Roger Federer is number one because he really does he brings the thickness to the table. Expressiveness, though, is important, and that's where Nadal comes in. Nadal is incredibly, the expressiveness is really at an elite level with Rafa. And then, it kind of gets tough after this. Let me just pull up Sinner. I mean, he does have the red factor, right? That unique color. But honestly, when I'm looking at Jannik Sinner, I might put him last because I'm really not drawn to his eyebrows. I'm not really looking at them, especially because his hair comes down to here. So, Sinner, if we were doing this by hair, Jannik would be number 1 or 2. But if we're doing this by eyebrows, I think Sinner, I just checked Google Images, and I think he's going to have to be last. Let's see, between Djokovic and Alcaraz, I would say similar eyebrows. But let me just review the film here. Carlos has more thickness than Djokovic. Actually, maybe I underappreciated Alcaraz's eyebrows a little bit. These are nice brows. They're just a little bit messy. He could use a little bit of some house cleaning up there, but naturally good thickness. And I'm gonna say then Alcaraz, then Djokovic, and then Sinner. All right, moving forward, I think I can start going a little bit faster through these. I think we hit the big ones that got a lot of likes, such as the eyebrow comment that we just covered. That got a lot of likes. So now, let's try to go faster now. From Abhishek. Hi, Gill. I have a couple of questions. One thing you have in common with the big three is being in a long-term relationship. What would you describe as your keys to a successful relationship? I'm not going to reinvent the wheel with this answer, and it's not something that I consider myself at all an expert on. But definitely learning how to talk about your feelings with your partner. I think that's probably the most important. I think when you're holding stuff in and you have all these resentments that you're just not expressing and communicating, there's nothing worse. And that to me is the killer, where all of all that negativity, it manifests itself in other ways. And then it's just a cycle of sort of further negativity. And number 2, how do you usually deal with/overcome setbacks in life? Talk to the people who have a support system. One is actually related to 2. The way I deal with setbacks in life is I have friends. I talk to my parents. I talk to my friends. I talk to my fiancé now. That's how I deal with it. From member Lindsay, are you a beach guy or a mountains guy? I'm a beach guy, I would say, but I really love both, and I get both. I go back and forth from LA. Tucson had incredible mountains. Salt Lake City has incredible mountains. They're a different color. In Salt Lake, they tend to be, well, in the winter, white, but they still have this more earthy kind of bluish hue. And then in Tucson, they're that desert orange. From Julius, is it planned to have a permanent sidekick on your podcast or just from time to time and stay a solo pod? Would love both, actually. I would throw Carousel in the pot for a podcast partner. I'm just going to cut that off there. I do want to have Carew on, although he's been on like every tennis podcast in the last month. So I try not to. I do want to have Carew on, but I do also try not to have the same guest that everybody else is having if I can avoid it. Permanent sidekick, I think what I do with the deep match analysis, I can't do that with a partner, and I always want to do that. So here's what I would say is I would love to bring somebody on board as like a regular co-host, but I still think that I would want to be doing certain segments solo, or I would want to have certain branches of my content be solo. So to answer your question, there will always be a solo aspect, but honestly, I have a desire to bring somebody else into the fold. It's just, I'm a little bit picky about it, and I have to make it worthwhile for them as well. And that is a challenge. From Eggs Over Easy. Hey, Gill, what are some things you love about living in Southern California, and what are some things you hate? Is it your forever home, or do you have any plans to move in the future? I don't know what my forever home is. I don't even think about it because I just know how unpredictable life can be, and ultimately, like, the career dictates a lot of it. But I would very much be open to SoCal being my forever home. That's for sure. What do I love the most? Being outside playing tennis year round, bar none. That's what I love about it the most. I also think it is an incredible place to eat amazing food on a regular basis. I think it's a tremendous food destination. So that's probably the top two. What do I hate about it? I would say the fact that there's very little walkability unless you're paying like crazy. I mean, there are a few areas where that's not true, but for the most part, horrible walkability. No public transportation. A lot of time spent in cars. I actually like driving. I like audio and blah, blah, blah. But the fact that, it's not an option, and it just leads to more isolation and more wasted time. And of course, it's worse for the environment if you want to throw that in. It's that's the worst part of it. How do you feel about ping pong? From the Progressive Michigander. I love ping pong. I got into a phase where I started to take it very seriously. I have, two of my best friends who, will be groomsmen at my wedding. The three of us would play for hours and hours and hours in each other's basements. I didn't have a table, but they did. I even got to the point where I was watching some pro table tennis. I was watching, Timo Boll. Shout out to Timo Boll. Shout out to Ma Lin, I believe. I think that's all I got, though. From Zitristan. Gill, now that you're a commentator highly respected by all around pro tennis, do you get recognized on the street in many cities? Question came to mind since YouTube posted one of my comments/questions for you under a video of @TGI China, whom I often watch. To my surprise, not only did she answer my tennis question, but she and another viewer of her fledgling channel said, "So nice to see someone else who watches Gill Gross." Wow, I don't know who TGI China is, so I'll check them out. If you're ever in Cape Town, okay, I don't need to read that out loud. But I'd love to visit Cape Town. That'd be great. Do I get recognized in public? So, not that often, but yesterday I went to the courts and got recognized 3 times in Santa Monica. I was playing at Reed Park, and somebody actually in the industry was the first person to recognize me. I mean, like in the content industry. So not a tennis fan, but just somebody who knows me through like more business related stuff. And then I got recognized by somebody walking by the courts and then another person who was coaching on one of the other courts. That is not normal. Some people ask me if I like it. Of course I like it. Of course I like it. It's a real, like, it means so much more to be recognized in public than to see a number next to your video where it says, okay, you got 20,000 views. Okay, cool. But like, that's a number. And definitely sometimes you look at the number and it feels good, but it's not like a real human thing. Whereas when you interact with real people in the wild, that's when you actually feel like, oh, that's cool. People are watching. People are listening. Like, that's when it hits you. Not when you look at how many views you got or how many subscribers you have. You know, those things are just numbers on a screen. Do I have anything else on this topic? Yeah, look, at the end of the day, if I'm hanging around tennis courts enough, then sometimes, but in public, rarely. Like in random places, I rarely get recognized. At the U.S. Open, that's a different story. At the U.S. Open, I'm getting recognized, you know, a handful of times every day. From member Thomas, hey Gill, could you talk about your baseball career? How long did you play? What positions? At what level? Love the podcast, by the way. Good question. So there was a recreation league where it's like everybody played. Didn't matter, you know, if you sucked, if you were athletic, if you were not. It was just everybody played in this rec baseball league. You know, parents would just throw their kids in there. It was like a big wide net participation. In that league, I was very good. I was one of the better players. I batted leadoff. I played shortstop. I was the closer for a team with two of my good friends, and we were really good. They were better than me. They ended up playing Division III baseball. They were really great lefty pitchers. But yeah, like I would play a central role on that team, and I was the third best player, maybe the fourth best batter, but I think all in all, the third best player. As a pitcher, I would throw a lot of strikes. I didn't throw very hard, but I kept it low in the zone, and my ball like had some kind of like some like natural sinker changeup action to it, and guys would hit a lot of ground balls off of my pitching. I was a great fielder. My glove was my strength by far. I had good footwork. I had good hands. I didn't have the best throwing arm, but it was good enough to get by. But my glove was my best attribute easily. I was very sure-handed. I made a lot of, you know, difficult plays in the infield. Hitting, that's where I struggled. I had no power. I just wasn't big and strong enough or explosive enough to really hit for any power. And that's why I was very limited as a player, because that's really at a huge premium in baseball. You know, you can be a great fielder. That only gets you so far. So I also played on the travel team, which is a more competitive team with a tryout and cuts. You know, you had to be pretty good in order to make that, in terms of at least being one of the best players in your age group in your town. And on that team, I was one of the worst players. I would bat 7th, 8th, or 9th. I would still play some second base. I would play some outfield. I would never pitch. I was not good enough to pitch on that team. So that's my baseball background. And then, you know, I ended up stopping and focusing on tennis. There is somebody here who asks me a lot more about my relationship with baseball and how it compares to tennis. You know, there was some politics involved in coaching that upset me as well with baseball. Like, I thought some of the decisions that were being made weren't really right or merit-based. And tennis is like the polar opposite of that. It's individualism. The responsibility is on you. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. I was an ultra competitive kid. I liked to feel the pressure. I liked the spotlight. I was not shy. And I think that's what drew me a lot to tennis, along with the fact that I just mentioned in baseball, I was underpowered as a batter. In tennis, I never felt like I had that issue. Now, of course, size does help in tennis when it comes to hitting big. But I think with like the technological factors and the mechanics of the sport, other than the height being a huge deal on the serve, and I always had such good serve technique that it kind of made up for a lot of it, at least for a lot of years. That wouldn't be the case at the highest levels, of course. I'd have a weak serve in Division I tennis, like, don't get me wrong. But compared to most of the people I would play over the years, my serve could hang. I never felt underpowered. So I also loved that about tennis. I was quick. I had good footwork, but I felt like I could hit with the big boys. That was a big factor. Size is just so important in some of these other sports. These baseball players are monstrous human beings. Basketball players, of course. I mean, height is such a huge deal. And if you're small, you just better have incredible fast twitch quickness and skills. You got to be a great shooter and all that stuff. So you're fighting an uphill battle. Football, the physicality, enough said. Size is so huge. And in tennis, I felt like I wasn't like at a huge disadvantage to being a, below average size guy. From David, hi Gill, thanks for your great podcast. What were your opening words to your fiancé when you first met? How did you get to know her, and how did you ask her out on your first date? What did you do on your first date? So we met at Syracuse University. She was interested in the same things that I was, and got involved in the student television station, the student radio station. And like, as a result, we don't actually remember meeting for the first time. We were just in the same places early on in our college careers, and we just ended up, knowing each other. But I think if it were like, let's say we met on an app, then obviously we'd remember meeting. Let's say we met at a bar or at a party, or, like, those are the kinds of things where you would remember meeting. The way we met, it's almost like, yeah, I mean, it was just a situation where there wasn't like a nice to meet you moment that either of us can remember. How did you get to know her? Yeah, again, we worked a lot together. We had some classes together. We were actually put together on the same show at the student TV station, Citrus TV. There was a host and two analysts. And at this time we were underclassmen. Usually upperclassmen would get the hosting gig, and underclassmen would get slotted in as analysts before they were ready, if they were good enough, to move on to be the host. We coincidentally, total coincidence, and I already had a crush on her at this time, were put together on the TV show in college as analysts, as co-analysts. And I had mixed feelings. I was like, well, that's great. I'm going to get to spend more time with Jenna. I was also like, oof, I can't screw this up. I can't make this awkward. If I were to ask her out and she says no, now we have to be on air together and do a show together. Plus I don't want her to feel, obviously I would have been careful about this, but if I made her feel uncomfortable or anything, then it would have been, a workplace issue, right? Where I could have gotten in trouble. So it also kind of made me a little bit uneasy. But she asked her friends to sort of come to me and ask me what I thought of her. And I was very upfront, yeah, I like her. And she had a sorority date night, which gave her the opportunity to actually ask me out. So technically she asked me out. How about that? Because she had a sorority date night, needed a date. I was her date. My plan was to wait until the end of the semester when we were no longer doing that show together, and then ask her out. That was my plan. How about that? We went on our first date. Yeah. We were sophomores at Syracuse. We went to a place called Blue Monkey. It's a sushi and ramen place. And then we went out to the sorority event, which was at a bar. And yeah, very, very memorable first date. I know we don't remember meeting, but I remember everything about that night, that first night, even though it was very long ago at this point. Okay, let's end on some Thailand stuff because I didn't get to talk much about it. So Somebody says, is packing and moving the bane of your existence? Yes, it is the worst. What are your thoughts on staying in hotels? Staying in a nice hotel to me is a pretty nice experience. I think air travel can be pretty cumbersome, but staying in hotels is not something that bothers me. From Vince, hey Gil, how was your trip to Thailand? And could you tell us about your other travels abroad so far? Best wishes for the festive season. Yeah, because I got to talk about the food in Thailand, but I didn't really cover much of anything else. Let me start with this. And people paint cities and places with this broad brush, and they go, the people here are nice, or the people here are not nice. And I've always I've never loved that. I've been like, come on, it's a city. Some people are nice, some people aren't. Depends on the individual. Why are we generalizing? All that to say this. The people in Thailand blew my mind with how universally courteous, respectful, and sweet they all seemed to be. I have never been to a place where I was so struck by how nice the people were. Other than that, there was just a lot of flavor to the whole experience. Things that Bangkok is known for. First of all, just having like tons and tons of spas everywhere, right? It's like, if you want to get massaged, I don't think there is a better city in the world. That was not a huge part. Like I only got one massage the whole time we were there. But that's one thing that Bangkok has that I feel like it's known for. Custom suits. So tailored suits. I grabbed myself 2 of them. Really happy with how those came out and very excited to wear them. It's a place where manufacturing those materials and sewing, it's done basically at a lower cost. So people kind of can take advantage of that when they come there by getting suits. We went to a Muay Thai fight, which is the national sport of Thailand. It was a big priority for me to see a Muay Thai fight in Bangkok, and that was very cool. They fight very safe and defensive. So they weren't the most thrilling action-packed fights, but I think that's because they have to fight a lot. Like a UFC fighter might fight if they're very active 4 times in a year, if they're not as active, maybe once a year, where I think these Muay Thai fighters are fighting all the time. So they got to make sure that they don't get beat up too bad. So they were very defensively responsible, but the atmosphere was awesome. The setting, the venue was awesome. And it was just great to experience. I love going to other places and kind of experiencing their sporting culture. We did, by the way, I was really, I didn't mention this on the food aspect, but I was really impressed with the coffee there. There was way more specialty coffee in Bangkok than there is in most American cities. Especially, I'm not saying like the total volume of it, but I'm saying like the percentage of coffee that I would consider to be specialty, insofar as they source their beans thoughtfully, they roast at a level that is, less commercial, I'll just say. There was a lot. It was not hard to find good coffee. I'll say that. We visited temples, beautiful feats of architecture, incredibly spiritual places as well. That was a pleasure to see the Buddhist temples, something that I won't forget. We were with a big group because I was there for my college roommate of 4 years. I was there also for his wedding. And he had a gorgeous, gorgeous wedding along the river that runs through Thailand. I forget what the river is called, but the setting was absolutely, it was so regal and really phenomenal. Hua Hin, cute little beach town, very, very charming. Good to see the ocean. The drive there, we saw a lot of the unique kind of nature and topography of Thailand. It's a very, very green place. Of course, it was very hot, even though it was the winter. So the weather was great, by the way. But if you go there in the summer, it gets really almost too hot. So, yeah, I think I will wrap it up there. I really, really enjoyed it. What I've been telling people is 10 out of 10 recommend, other than the flight. I think it is an awesome place other than the flight. Speaking of which, I know somebody asked me what's the best airport, and the answer is Salt Lake City. So one of the things I'm excited about is my home airport is the best airport. It checks all the boxes, everything you want. Convenient location for rideshare, convenient location for rental car pickup if you need one. Plentiful food options. You sit down in a waiting area. You have a cup holder. You have an outlet. Plenty of places to sit down. Nothing, the baggage claim isn't too far either. Like it's a well laid out, convenient airport. Delta hub flies, direct flights basically wherever you want to go. We flew Salt Lake City to Seoul, Korea, direct. Seoul, by the way, also a really cool airport for the food in particular. So Salt Lake City is the answer to that question. All right. So I know there's plenty more that I could have gone into, but I am going to end it there. Thank you, everybody, as always, for your questions. Really excited to get the tennis content rolling once again as we charge towards the start of the 2026 season. A very hearty happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Have a good one. See you soon. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.